Good evening. Sorry that it has been such a crazy last couple of days. This is day 12. We are finishing up here really shortly. So if y'all are getting a little overwhelmed, it's okay. We've covered a lot of topics here in the last few days. So try not to be overwhelmed. Really just go through the last few weeks and look for things that you really resonate with. What do you feel like is something you can really commit to, really change, and that you feel like you'd get the biggest bang for your buck? So if toxicity is a big thing for you, then focus on those. If it's finding rest in gratitude, maybe it's more mood and mental health kind of stuff, then focus on that. And maybe it's nutrition, and that's a lot of the things that I've been covering with my specific lives. So if that's it, feel free to reach out for more help, and just know that no one is expecting anyone to take these 14 days of education and just completely change everything overnight. Most of us that are leading, all of us that are leading these lives and this education, we've learned this over the last several years. I've been learning this over the last 9, almost 10 years that I've been making these changes. So for you guys to for some of the stuff that you've already changed, that took me weeks, months, years to figure out. So just know that. I just want to encourage you. I kind of feel like a sense of little overwhelm myself just with life and all of this challenge. And so I assume that there's probably some of that going on with you guys too. So I notice there's less and less people commenting and sharing pictures from the challenge. So those of you that have stayed committed, like, so good. That's so good. So be encouraged, but know that there's no expectation to complete everything. So the only thing that's hanging in the balance is a big old athlete's kit of essential oils. So I hope that everyone who's still participating in will get a chance at that. So today we're talking about understanding labels, and it probably is something I should have talked about yesterday before we started talking about sugars, because all of y'all that went through all of your cupboards, you were looking at the labels of foods, and what you may not have realized is you weren't even focusing on the top portion of that label. Most of us in America are trained to look at the calories, total fat, saturated fat, cholesterol, sodium, carbohydrates, proteins, that section of the label. And really that stuff is all still marketing. It's kind of crazy. I'll explain it a little bit as we get going. The most important part of the label is what you guys were looking at yesterday when you were looking for secret sugars, and that is the ingredients list. That's really all I ever look at on the box. So here's what the people who manufacture food want you to look at. They want you to look at the front of the box, all sides of the box, and then that tiny little nutrition facts label. They don't want you to look at the ingredients at all. And so a lot of times what's written on the front doesn't actually match the back. And that's because they're not always required to do that. So here's a few things I want you to consider when you're reading the labels on your foods. First of all, like I said, we've been taught to read the wrong part of the label. The grams of fat, serving size, and all those other related points are far less important than the ingredients. So important that you're looking at the ingredients list. That's where your eye should go to first. So if you've been trained to look at the calories, you've been trained to look at the fats, you've been trained to look at the carbohydrates, it is probably a very old, outdated method of nutrition. And so you want to maybe do some new research and reconsider. For example, when we're talking calories specifically, I always thought calories in, calories out, right? Eat crap, just make sure you exercise. And it just doesn't work like that. We're learning this week that our body metabolizes sugar into fat. Our bodies take those bad fats and they turn them into bad cells, which builds inflammation and disease. So it does matter what you eat, and it does matter what's in your food. So consider that one handful of almonds has the same amount of calories as a Twinkie. So some people get all worked up about calories, and they see what I eat and they say that is full of saturated fat and it's full of calories. I can't eat that way. My grandmother is trained in like typical label reading. That's how we all grew up, right? So she looks at the coconut oil that I'll bring over and she says, "Whoa, that's a lot of calories. That is all saturated fat. How can you be eating that?" And what she doesn't realize is that everything that she's learned about saturated fat and calories is wrong. It's outdated information. We've learned so much more. And so just know that. I don't look at any of that part of the label, and we take our health very seriously. So here's what's important. Focus on the ingredients part of the label and look for a minimal number of ingredients. Did you guys notice when you were going through your products that some of them had like lists and lists and lists of ingredients? Here, I'll show you an example out of a book that I'm reading, a very typical ingredients list. Here it is, right? Typical packaged food label. Isn't that the truth? That is exactly what so many labels look like. Water, sugar-free gelatin, artificially flavored, adipic acid for sodium citrate, citric acid, aspartame, acetylcholine, potassium, artificial flavor, phenol sub, like I can't even read this stuff. Like modified soy lecithin, salt, guar gum, modified cellulose, preservatives, xanthan gum, artificial flavors, enzymes, wheat, soy, diacetate, sodium aspartate, sodium nitrate, natural and artificial flavors, American pasteurized. Like, this is just crazy, right? How are we supposed to know what we're actually eating? Those are all chemicals made in a lab, not God's food. So consider that there are natural ingredients, and sometimes food that is in a package is okay because the ingredients are still natural. But what do we know that is in the grocery store with no label? We don't have to do label reading in the produce section, right? In the meat section, in the frozen, like frozen vegetables and stuff. There's no label, right? If there is, it might say frozen peas or frozen broccoli, frozen strawberries. So just know that when I go to the store, we shop around the whole outside edge of the perimeter. In your mind, think about the grocery store that you go to and think about what would happen if you walk right into the middle of the store. What is there? Aisles and aisles and aisles of boxed foods, right? Canned foods. If you walk on the outside of the store, what do you hit first typically? Produce. And then you get to the back and maybe it's like meats and fresh meats and deli meats and cheeses and stuff like that. And then you get to the other side and it's maybe frozen stuff. The whole outside is all typically pretty safe zone. It's the middle aisles that's danger. So I don't spend a lot of time in the middle aisles. And if I have an ingredient that's on my list that ends up being in one of those middle aisles, I'm in trouble because I don't know my way around in there. That's when the Hy-Vee lady comes up and she's like, "Can I help you find something?" I'm like, "Yes, I feel like I'm in China. I have no idea what I'm doing here," because it's been so many years now that I haven't been shopping in the middle aisles. So that's a little bit of a challenge for you. Can you get your grocery list done by not heading into any of the inside aisles? I can. It's pretty awesome. And then, so buy more foods that aren't required to have labels. And then what you might notice from your challenge yesterday is make a habit of checking the label on every item that you buy. Because there's so many that might be labeled natural on the front, or low sugar, or low in carbohydrates, or sugar-free, or whatever. And none of that is regulated. Nobody requires those labels, those terms like natural to mean anything. And so they can just throw that on there and then you are tempted to buy it because you're trying to make healthy choices. You're a conscious consumer. And so if you're like some people in my life, they get tricked. And so I want to save you from that mistake. Make sure you're checking the label on every item that you buy. And honestly, manufacturers are constantly getting bought out by other companies. And so you have to keep checking the labels because they might change their ingredients that they're putting in a product. I noticed this one time I was used to work for an office that would take people on shopping tours to the grocery stores and show different things that we recommended to buy and teach people how to read labels and all of this. And I remember the person that was leading it, he was showing a toothpaste that he used. And I was like, "I think you should check that label again because I'm pretty sure that it had changed." And one of the first ingredients was a toxic ingredient. And so maybe you're familiar with the brand name Tom's. They've actually been bought out by Colgate. Crazy, right? So big companies like Colgate buy out smaller companies like Tom's, and then they can do whatever they want with the ingredients, and they don't have to tell you if they change it. So just a word to the wise, if you're using Tom's toothpaste, you probably have a bad ingredient in there that you should reconsider, because they have recently changed it in the last few years. So here's some common mistakes that people are making when they're looking at labels. They're spending a lot of time looking at grams of fat, carbohydrates, proteins, calories, serving size. Remember that the recommended daily values, they have no consideration for how old you are, how much you weigh, how much you exercise, any of your specific dietary needs, and they can manipulate that serving size so that their ingredients, they can write trans fat free, because per serving size there's no trans fat in there. It's so small that it doesn't have to be measured, but overall there's trans fats in there, and you can find them in the labels if you're actually looking at the ingredients list. So know that that is all marketing there. Just be very, very careful. Be careful of any kind of advertising claims like I talked about, like low in fat, trans fat free, sugar free. Those all typically have very unhealthy, dangerous ingredients once you actually get to the ingredients part of the label, and that's where you're going to start finding high fructose corn syrup, and different things like that. So I loved all the pictures you guys threw up yesterday of your labels. It's a lot of those really sweet condiments. I saw salad dressings, jellies, barbecue sauces, ketchups. Those are all the ones that they've got that super cheap sweetener in there, so that they can make you addicted to it, and you want to keep going back and buying it off the shelf. But it is bad, 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 bad. So low fat, low in carbohydrates, or sugar-free does not make something healthy. I'm sure a lot of you guys know that already. And then if it's organic or located in the health food section, it is still not guaranteed good. There is so much that I don't buy in the health food market at Hy-Vee. There's very little actually that I'm buying in there. Most of those aisles I don't even go down, because it's still tons and tons of packaged food that has very bad labels in it. Just because it's gluten-free doesn't mean it's good for you. When people tell me that they're gluten-free, I sometimes cringe, because I'm thinking, ooh, that probably means you're eating a lot of boxed foods out of the gluten-free health market section, and it's just full of these bad ingredients. So here's some common hidden ingredients that you want to look out for. So like we talked about yesterday, various forms of sugar. So anything ending in OSE, the sugars that we talked about yesterday. Monosodium glutamate, very, very bad. It stimulates free radical production. So if you want your body to age very, very quickly, then you would consume monosodium glutamate. It is a very addictive seasoning that makes things taste really good. So we joke even now if we're out in a restaurant and my husband's like, "This is so good." I'm like, probably has MSG in it, because it makes food taste like better than it should, right? Yeah, you know what I mean? Have you ever had a meal where you're like, "This is so stinking amazing"? And it's like, it shouldn't taste this good, right? Why is it tasting this good? And don't get me wrong, there is very healthy food that tastes good, but just know that monosodium glutamate might be a reason why. Hydrolyzed is actually how you say it, and hydrolyzed and autolyzed ingredients. So that means it's highly heated, and it's an addictive excitotoxin. So it makes your brain go crazy. It's an excitotoxin. It's something that makes you crave it and want more of it, but it is literally causing problems in the brain. So if you see that word autolyzed, hydrolyzed, not good. So artificial sweeteners, like we talked about, sucralose, aspartame, and then hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated oils. Those are trans fats. So it can say trans fat free. Maybe you've even seen that in like Chinese restaurants and things now. Trans fats have been very demonized, which is good. They're terrible for the body. But as long as the serving size is small enough that you wouldn't actually be taking in a measurable amount of the trans fat in the serving size, then they can label it trans fat free, even though it's full of trans fats. If it has hydrogenated oils in it, that's what trans fat is. So have you ever looked at the serving sizes for something like ice cream is a half a cup? who has a half a cup of ice cream? Like, nobody. Cereal, same thing. It's like a fourth of a cup or 2/3 cup. And I'm like, I have never seen a human under the age of 6 sit down with a 2/3 cup bowl of cereal. And that's how they can get away with it. So just know that if the quantity per serving is less than 500 milligrams, then they can tell you it's trans fat free. You'll notice that the serving size keeps shrinking year after year after year. So, and then refined flour that's organic, still not good. If it's not sprouted, whole grain, or stone ground, then it's refined and the body can't process it. So refined is not good. You don't want refined coconut oil. You don't want refined olive oil. You don't want refined grains. That means processed. And then finally, additives, colorings, chemicals, preservatives, no coloring. Lunchables, I want you to go into the store next time. I hope you're not buying Lunchables for your kids. I hate to demonize certain products, but these ones, you just have to go look at the label. It is the entire length of the package, and there's food colorings all over it. My children don't care if their food is blue. That's just all marketing to get them to eat it, right? So those are the things that I wanted to go through about reading labels. I hope it doesn't overwhelm you. I hope it just inspires you and helps you feel like more of a conscious consumer. Because it is no fun to feel like you're being lied to, right? Like you've been lied to. And so I want you to be a conscious, educated consumer that can go out and just be empowered to find what you need to in food for your family. You just deserve to know. So that's my last live of the week. You have one more tomorrow, I think with Londa probably, and then one more with Laura, I think on Sunday. So just have loved hanging out with you guys. Know that I'm always available personally for questions. You can private message me here on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram at Melissa Christopher, and I'm always updating on healthy stuff there. I just posted 2 DIY recipes on my Instagram today for baby wipes and all-purpose spray. So be on the lookout there. I'd love to chat with you guys more. It's been a blessing to hang out with you in the next these weeks, and I look forward to learning with you here in the future. So have a great night. Thanks for being flexible with me the last couple of days. We'll talk soon.